Ladies and gentlemen, today we are going to be looking at one of the big ones. One of the big, spicy Mamma Mias of bad cartoons. I am, of course, talking about the infamous 2003 cartoon, Ren and Stimpy's Adult Party cartoon. I'm just going straight into this just because, oh my god, I gotta be real with you. I knew this was gonna be bad. I didn't think it was going to be this bad, though. I knew it was going to be a bad cartoon, but, I had no idea it was going to be this bad. I went into this thing blind, okay? I knew nothing about it except that it was a really hated, revival or whatever spin-off of Ren and Stimpy. And that's it. Nothing could prepare me for how bad it was. What is this, bro? What the is this? I originally thought that this was going to be a really hard cartoon for me to review because this is a very infamous show. Literally everyone has talked about it. Every cartoon YouTuber has talked about this. It's like this unwritten rule where it's like if you're an animation YouTuber, you have to make at least one video talking about how bad Ren and Stimpy's Adult Party cartoon is. It's like this sacred rule that everyone has to follow in the animation community. As I said before in a previous search for the worst cartoon, I much prefer looking at weird, obscure cartoons instead of the more infamous, easy targets, because there's more stuff for me to say. To give you an idea, it's much easier for me to review, the Slim Shady Show compared to Velma, because the Slim Shady Show is a very obscure show. Literally no one has ever heard of the Slim Shady Show. If I went up to someone and I told them Eminem had a cartoon, they would be baffled by that. If I told them that that said Eminem cartoon is also one of the worst cartoons ever made, they would be extra baffled. Whereas Velma is everyone's talked about it. Everyone already knows why it's bad, so it's there is literally nothing new for me to add to the discussion of why Velma is bad. There's also the fact that Slim Shady Show is genuinely much worse than Velma. Doesn't matter though, because Ren and Stimpy's Adult Party cartoon is easily worse than both of them. I thought that because this was probably the most infamous cartoon I've looked at on this series, this might be the most hated cartoon ever made, it would be hard for me to review it because I have nothing new to say about it. As it turns out though, this show is so bad that at this point I genuinely don't care if I just state whatever Mr. Enter or any other cartoon YouTuber had already said about the show. Because my god, nothing could prepare me for how bad this show was. I'm being serious right now. I know I keep saying this a lot. I know it keeps changing and changing within the last few episodes, but this is the worst cartoon I've ever seen. I didn't, I gotta stop saying oh, it can't get any worse than this, because I said that in a lot of the previous videos where I looked at whatever I considered the worst, Fairview and all that. I keep thinking oh, it can't get any worse than this, and it does get worse than this, and it will get worse than this. This actually is as bad as everyone says it is. I'm genuinely surprised by that. I went into this curious and honestly pretty nervous as to why everyone hated this show, and then when I sit down and I watch it, it's just, oh my god, I feel like it is very important for me to mention that I have never seen, well, actually, I watched a little bit of the original Ren and Stimpy when I was a kid. I don't really have a lot of, memories of it, but I did watch it. I have very few memories of it. It's not because, oh, it's an early 90s cartoon and, it was before I was born, because I did watch 90s Nickelodeon quite a bit. I watched Hey Arnold and Rocko's Modern Life and all that stuff. Ren and Stimpy, I just never watched that much. I don't know if it's did I like it? Did I not like it? I don't remember, but I definitely did watch it. And I even with this, and even with, the creator being a awful person, I still respect its importance to Nickelodeon history and animation history as a whole. I had no idea if me not watching the original Ren and Stimpy would affect how I would look at Adult Party cartoon. It's definitely still awful. I can 100% certify that Adult Party cartoon, even if you've somehow never heard of the original Ren and Stimpy, Adult Party cartoon is still terrible. Ren and Stimpy's Adult Party cartoon is, as the name suggests, an adult-oriented version of the original Ren and Stimpy. Instead of airing on Nickelodeon, it aired on Spike TV. It only had 6 episodes made, and that was it. 3 of the episodes were aired onto Spike TV before the show got canceled, and then the remaining 3 episodes wouldn't be released until 2006 on DVD, where the show was marketed as Ren and Stimpy: The Lost Episodes. I wanted to try and sit through all 6 episodes. I only managed to tolerate the first 2 episodes and half of the 3rd episode before I decided, yeah, I'm done. I'm not watching this anymore. My god. I genuinely refuse to watch this thing a second time. I don't even care what people say. I'm gonna put as little effort into this video as possible, as little editing as possible. I'm not going to show like screenshots and whatever images from the show itself, because number one, there is a lot of disgusting imagery in this show, and I'm going to get into that in a little bit. There's a lot of really awful imagery, and it's not worth digging through the episodes to find the very, very, very few instances where there's like not disgusting imagery in the show. So instead, just have random gifs of animals and whatever, you know, that just treat this like it's an audio only review. Just do it like that. It's an audio only review. Ignore the visuals unless you want to see cute animals, and just leave this on in the background. Go and like play a game or something, do something else, and just leave this playing in the background, this video. What I usually do with a search for the worst cartoon is I watch the episodes of the show that I want to review, and then I start recording a little bit of audio for it, and then when it comes to like actually talking about the show itself, like what happens in it, what happens in a specific episode, I rewatch the episode also to get screenshots or footage from the show. I rewatch episodes and whatever to do that. I am not doing it for this one. I could do it for literally all of the cartoons I've looked at before this. I am not doing it for this one. That. Now, I'm sure that literally every cartoon YouTuber has already talked about this, but you know what? I don't even care. I don't care if this comes off as like unoriginal, cliche. I don't care if it's just the same thing that like Mr. Enter or whatever Saber Spark had already said about the show. Any cartoon YouTuber, I don't know. I don't even care if I'm just saying the same thing that they've said about the show in the past. I'm just gonna say this right now. The imagery in the show is really gross. Now, I know that Ren and Stimpy, the original Nickelodeon show, was known for its very, like, wacky, exaggerated, like, surreal humor, and I'm sure it was funny there, but in this show, it's just like, oh, you know? When I first went into this show, I thought it was gonna be, like, full of, like, edgy, offensive humor and whatever, really, like, poorly done black comedy akin to like the Slim Shady show or something like that. And yeah, there is a little bit of that in the show here and there, a lot of very poorly executed dark humor, but there's also a huge amount of toilet humor as well, an excessive amount, far more toilet humor than any show should ever have. And it gets to a point where it's just like, it's just trying way too hard. Like, it's just forcing it. It's like, yo, look at this toilet humor or whatever. Isn't this funny, guys? It's like, it's just forcing it. It's trying too hard. I thought this was just gonna be full of like edgy, offensive humor, but like, nah, it's just full of like toilet humor, excessive toilet humor. It's ironically enough that makes it less like mature. I wouldn't. It would be actually insane if like the original Nickelodeon version that's meant to be for kids, that ends up being like more mature than this version that's supposed to be explicitly for adults. The first episode of the show involves Ren and Stimpy living inside of someone's like mouth, like a homeless guy's mouth or something like that. It's never explained. I guess it's just because, you know, it's wacky, it's funny and whatever. I really don't feel comfortable when it comes to like talking about the jokes in this show, because I don't want to risk demonetization. There is a lot of like gross out jokes and whatever, and this is like, it just goes on forever. It just goes on for a long time, and it never ends. In addition to the fact that there's just too much toilet humor, like way more toilet humor than there needs to be. A lot of the jokes in this show just go on much longer than they need to be. Like they could be cut out for like a few seconds, and like they could still be funny. They could probably be salvaged. I don't know. You keep running a joke for like a good like 20 or so seconds, and it like eventually it just stops being funny. For the first few seconds is funny, but then eventually it wears out its welcome. It's like, okay, just give me the punchline already. Eventually the two of them move into this like vase that's like inside of a bar. I have no idea. There's like a whole like dinner scene with the excessive gross out humor, and like throughout watching it the only thing I could think of is like, what the is this, like seriously? And that's it. Most of the episode is just this like dinner scene, and that's it. There's basically like almost no plot in the first episode. I'm aware of the episode Ren Seeks Help, the second episode of the show, the only other episode that I was able to complete in full, and yeah, it's a terrible episode, but like at least it has somewhat of a plot. It has a really up plot, but it has a plot at least. This first episode is like, what happens in it? Like, what is the plot? There is no plot. Most of the plot is just this dinner scene with gross out humor, and that's it. Eventually, though, they get kicked out of the bar, they get kicked out of the vase, whatever, and then they end up back inside the homeless man, and again, they end up inside the homeless man's mouth. I just don't know, honestly. I cannot stand to talk about this show. It's not because like, oh, it's infamous. It's just because like I never want to engage with this show again. I'm so sorry. Chances are, if you're watching this video, you've already like heard a lot of like how bad this show is. This is easily the most infamous cartoon I've looked at on this series, and god damn it, does it deserve that reputation, because holy shit, this actually is really hard to sit through. Each episode is like at least 20 minutes long, and it's not even consistent with the length, you know? The infamous Ren Seeks Help is like 23 minutes long, and then the episode after that, Fire Dogs 2, which I watched like half of it, and then I decided that, you know what, I'm done with this show. I cannot stand another second of it. It's 27 minutes long. It's almost 30 minutes long, and I can't even begin to imagine how long the other 3 episodes of the show are. Like, just no. I cannot watch this. I refuse to finish this. I know this feels like a very like lazy video and whatever, but like I cannot touch this thing again. I refuse to touch it again. I initially thought that this was tied with Fairview for being the worst cartoon, because you know what? Who said there couldn't be 2 worst cartoons ever made? Who said there could only be one, you know? There was never any sort of rule that like, oh, there cannot be 2 worst cartoons ever made. There can only be one. And so I had this tied together with Fairview. It's just like, this is just so much worse. I feel like this is a bit of a cop-out because I'm putting an infamous bad cartoon as the worst cartoon I've seen on this series and the worst cartoon ever made, when like previously I put like obscure stuff like Slim Shady Show and Fairview and whatever as the worst, you know, Red Ape Family. But I genuinely cannot stress enough how terrible this show is. I don't even want to get into the whole thing of like, oh, it's mean-spirited or whatever, because as I've said a couple times in previous episodes, I have a stronger tolerance for black comedy than other cartoon YouTubers. Of course, the black comedy in this show is really poorly executed, but, you know, I'm not going around being like, oh, it's so mean-spirited and whatever, when, like, my bigger problem with this show is just the gross out moments and less like the offensive, edgy humor. In fact, I expected it to be full of edgy and offensive humor, when that wasn't really the case for the most part. I mean, that's how it was for the infamous Ren Seeks Help, but for the most part, for the other 2 episodes that I watched, well, 1.5 episodes if I want to be accurate, it's just gross out humor, and that's it. Toilet humor, excessive like gross out imagery, and that's it. And I cannot be bothered. I am so sorry, but I genuinely hate this show. I wouldn't be surprised if this turned me away from watching the original Ren and Stimpy. I'm sure the original Ren and Stimpy is a great show. I'm sure it is a classic, but holy hell, this actually is as bad as people said it was. Y'all were not lying, for real. Oh yeah, John K as well. I gotta be honest, in addition to this thing's existence, the fact that John K is a terrible person also kind of makes me not want to give the original Ren and Stimpy that much of a chance, because I just know it'll make me feel uncomfortable because of these 2 things. I mean, to be fair though, from what little I know, the original Ren and Stimpy ran for 5 seasons, and of the 5 seasons, only the first 2 seasons had John K's involvement in them. Seasons 3 to 5, like, he was fired from the show. He was fired from Nickelodeon, and so he wasn't involved at all in seasons 3 to 5. I have no idea. I'm really hoping that this isn't an instance where it's like, oh, the show became bad after he left or whatever. This isn't going to be like that. I really hope this is not one of those shows. I'm hoping maybe this is going to be like, it's equally as good without him in it, or like it's actually better without him in it. I'm so sorry for this like kind of rushed video. It's not, I guess it's rushed. I don't know. It's just, I cannot do this. I hate this show. It actually is terrible. I'm actually offended by how bad this is. This actually is as bad as people said it was. Y'all were not lying. I tell you what. I know it's like the popular opinion and whatever, but it actually is. It truly is. It just... This is the worst cartoon ever made. Fairview was like... For a while I had this tied with Fairview, but like just barely. This is worse than Fairview. Just barely. Fairview still comes dangerously close to being the worst. I originally had both shows tied, and then now it's like, nah, Ren and Stimpy is worse. I'm sorry. So yeah, I cannot be bothered to talk about this show anymore. Yeah, I got a headache right now, okay? I really don't want to talk about this show anymore. I'm so sorry. If you enjoyed this video, despite the rushed, like, feel of it, because I genuinely don't want to talk about this show anymore. I don't want to acknowledge its existence anymore. I just want to move on from this as fast as I possibly can. I can't even speak correctly. I can't even speak words correctly now. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to like, and if you're new to the channel, maybe consider subscribing, as it would be really appreciated. Thank you everyone for watching this video, and I will see you all next time. Adios.